Chapter 1: The Midnight Door. The city was asleep. The streets, usually buzzing with life, now lay silent beneath the faint glow of the streetlights. The air was cool, crisp, heavy with the quiet hum of a world that had yet to wake up. In the heart of the city, nestled between two towering skyscrapers, was an old, forgotten building. A place no one ever really noticed, not even the ones who passed it every day. It was a relic, a remnant of a time long past. The sign above the door had long since faded, the paint chipped and cracked, but the door itself, well, the door always seemed to have a life of its own. That door, though hidden in plain sight, was the only entrance to the underworld, a place where the monsters, the real ones, lived. And tonight, something stirred inside. Inside the building, deep in its shadows, there was a room. It was small and cramped, but it was home to a group of creatures who, though terrifying to anyone who dared look too closely, were the softest beings you could ever meet. They weren't like the monsters of the fairy tales, no, they were something more. They were the workers, the unsung heroes of the night. The room was lit by a soft, flickering light that barely cast any shadows. A large machine sat in the center, its gears turning quietly, its purpose mysterious even to those who had worked on it for years. Above the machine, a sign read, "Scare Factory, where the good monsters make your dreams come true." In this room, monsters didn't scare children, they made sure they had good dreams. The leader of the monsters, a large, furry creature with blue fur and big, round eyes, was busy adjusting the machine's dials. His name was Munch. Despite his intimidating size, Munch was gentle, a big softy at heart. He was the one who ran the show here. It wasn't an easy job, and it certainly wasn't glamorous, but Munch loved it. There was something incredibly fulfilling about creating joy, especially when it came from the one thing monsters were known for, fear. Munch! Munch, a voice called out from across the room. It was a smaller creature, with green scales and tiny wings. His name was Glee, and despite his size, he was one of the most energetic workers in the factory. His job? To help ensure the dreams children had were not only sweet but interesting, because dreams, after all, needed a little excitement to keep them engaging. Munch turned, his eyes softening when he saw his friend. "What is it, Glee?" "There's a problem," Glee said, his wings fluttering with excitement, or maybe it was anxiety. It was hard to tell with him sometimes. "The door. It's acting up again." Munch's eyes narrowed. The door had always been a bit of a mystery, even to him. It was the only way in and out of their world, the only way they could connect to the human realm. And over the years, it had grown more and more unpredictable. "Is it the usual?" Munch asked, already heading toward the door. Glee nodded. "Yes, but it's different this time." Munch opened the heavy, creaking door, revealing a swirling, glowing vortex beyond it. The portal flickered as if it were struggling to stay open. He could see the human world on the other side, but something wasn't right. The colors were all wrong, warped, shifting like oil on water. "Is it broken?" Glee asked, his voice tinged with fear. Munch leaned closer, studying the anomaly. "It looks like it. But this isn't normal, something's disrupting the balance." The factory hummed with life, the machinery behind them ticking away like clockwork, but Munch couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something had changed. And whatever it was, it wasn't good. "We need to fix this," Munch said, determination in his voice. "Should we tell the others?" Glee asked, glancing over his shoulder. "No. Not yet. I don't want to worry anyone until we know what's going on," Munch replied, his eyes never leaving the portal. He could feel the pull of it, an energy that was both familiar and unsettling. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he knew that if they didn't figure it out soon, everything they had worked for could be at risk. For the first time in a long while, Munch felt a pang of uncertainty. The world beyond the door had always been predictable, children's dreams, simple, innocent, sweet. But this time, something was wrong. And if Munch didn't act quickly, it could change everything. Chapter 2: The Distorted Dream. The air around Munch and Glee seemed to pulse with strange energy. The door flickered again, the light from the human world flickering like a dying flame, casting eerie shadows on the factory walls. Munch stepped closer, his massive furry paws making no sound on the cold floor. "What do we do now?" Glee asked, his wings fluttering nervously. He was no stranger to handling strange situations, but this was different. This wasn't just an ordinary glitch in the system. This felt wrong. Munch didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out and gently placed his hand on the shimmering edge of the door. It sent a chill through him, the sensation of being pulled in two directions at once. The dream world on the other side was calling to him, but something was off. "I'm not sure," Munch muttered, his voice low. "But we need to find out where the distortion is coming from. If we don't, we could lose control over the dreams, and that would be catastrophic." Glee hovered near Munch, looking through the door at the swirling colors on the other side. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The vibrant blues and purples were replaced with deep, unsettling reds and yellows, pulsing as if they were alive. "I've never seen a dream like that," Glee said, his voice filled with awe. "It's so chaotic." Munch nodded grimly. "The dreams should be calm, peaceful. This isn't right. Someone is tampering with the dreamscapes, and if we don't stop them, they could cause an irreparable shift." Glee's wings drooped slightly. "But who would do such a thing? And why?" Munch gave him a long, thoughtful look. "That's what we need to figure out." Before he could say anything else, a voice rang out from the shadows of the factory. It was deep and rough, a voice that always carried authority. "Munch!" "Glee!" It was Chris, one of the senior workers and the one responsible for the security systems in the factory. He looked worried, which was not a common expression on Chris's face. Munch turned to face him. "What is it, Chris?" "We've got a situation," Chris said, striding toward them. "The dream disturbance, it's not just in one spot anymore. It's spreading. I've checked the systems. The portal is destabilizing faster than we anticipated. It's already reaching other areas." Munch's stomach dropped. The dreamscapes were supposed to be secure, isolated. If they were being corrupted on such a massive scale, then the effects would be devastating. "Do we know where it's coming from?" Munch asked, his voice steady despite the rising panic in his chest. "I've traced it to a single source," Chris said. "But it's impossible. It's coming from within the factory." The words hit Munch like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, within the factory?" He looked around as if expecting to find the culprit hiding behind the machines. This was their home, their sanctuary. The thought of something or someone disrupting the very foundation of everything they worked for seemed incomprehensible. Chris hesitated, clearly unsure of how to explain. "I don't understand it, either. The source seems to be tied to the machine. The one that powers the door. But the data is all scrambled. Something or someone has messed with the code. It's almost like..." "Like what?" Glee pressed, eager for answers. "Like it's alive," Chris finished, his eyes wide with disbelief. Munch's heart skipped a beat. Alive? The machine wasn't supposed to be alive. It was a piece of technology, a tool, created to channel the dreams of children safely into their worlds. But what Chris was suggesting was far beyond anything he could comprehend. "Impossible," Munch muttered under his breath. "The machine is just machinery. There's no way it could." A sudden, sharp noise interrupted him, followed by the sound of metal grinding against metal. The lights in the factory flickered, casting long shadows across the walls. The air grew heavy, thick with the sense that something was about to break. Munch, we need to act fast, Chris said, urgency in his tone. If we don't fix the portal now, it might collapse entirely. And if that happens, it'll rip apart the dreamscapes and the human world, Munch finished, already thinking ahead. We'll have chaos in both realms. Worse than that, if the balance is lost completely, the barrier between our world and theirs could collapse, and monsters could spill out into the human world. Glee shuddered. We can't let that happen. Munch's mind raced. He had to find the source of the disturbance. He had to find out what was causing the machine to act this way before the damage spread further. We'll need to go deeper into the factory. Find the core of the machine, Munch said, his voice resolute. But we have to be careful. Whoever or whatever did this knows what they're doing. We might not be alone in there. Chris nodded grimly. I'll go with you. Glee, stay here and keep an eye on the portal. If anything else goes wrong, we need to know immediately. Glee gave a sharp nod, his wings twitching in determination. Got it. I'll make sure nothing else gets worse. Munch and Chris turned toward the darkened hallway that led deeper into the heart of the factory. As they walked, the hum of the machines grew louder, more intense, as if the very walls of the factory were coming alive. Do you think we're dealing with a rogue monster? Chris asked, his voice low. Munch shook his head. No. Whoever is behind this isn't a monster. There's someone or something who knows how the system works. As they reached the core of the factory, the air grew colder, and a strange static filled the air. The machine in front of them was unlike anything Munch had ever seen. It was massive, with pulsing wires and cables running in every direction. But now, it seemed to be breathing. Something's very wrong, Munch muttered, staring at the machine. Whatever is causing this, it's in there. And we have to stop it. Chapter 3: The Heart of the Machine. The air around the machine was thick with an eerie, unnatural energy. The once steady hum of the factory now felt like a low growl, as if the very walls were alive with anticipation. Munch and Chris stood before it, both stunned by what they were witnessing. The machine, the core, was pulsing in rhythm, like the beat of a heart. It wasn't just malfunctioning. It was breathing. The cables around it twitched as if they had a life of their own, and the air shimmered with static. This was no ordinary technology. What in the world? Chris whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. Munch, is this even possible? Munch stared at the machine, trying to make sense of what was happening. His mind raced, drawing on everything he knew about the factory's systems. There had never been anything like this. No machine was supposed to be alive. It was impossible. But the evidence was right in front of him, undeniable. I don't know, Munch admitted, his voice low. But whatever this is, it's feeding off the energy from the dreamscapes. It's using that energy to grow. Chris's eyes narrowed. Grow? You mean this machine is feeding on the dreams of children? Munch nodded slowly. That's exactly what I mean. And it's using that energy to fuel itself. But I don't understand why. Machines don't need dreams to survive. They don't need life. Then who or what put it in motion? Chris asked, stepping closer to the machine. And how do we stop it? Munch took a deep breath, steeling himself. We need to find the source. The root of this disturbance. There's something controlling this, something alive. Suddenly, a strange crackling noise filled the air. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, and the lights flickered. The machine's pulsations grew faster, more erratic. What's happening? Glee's voice crackled through the intercom system, his tone tense. The portal, it's shifting more than ever. The distortion is spreading. Munch's heart skipped a beat. If the distortion in the dreamscapes was spreading this fast, it would only be a matter of time before the entire system broke down. The chaos would spill into both worlds. "We need to hurry," Munch said, determination filling his voice. "Chris, we need to access the control panel. If we can override the machine's core, we can shut it down. But we have to do it fast." Chris nodded, already moving toward the control panel in the back of the room. The panel was covered in tangled wires, blinking lights, and dials that seemed to shimmer and shift, as if reacting to the presence of the two monsters. Munch stayed close, his mind racing through the steps he needed to take. The machine had been designed to channel energy from the dreamscapes, but this was something far more dangerous. It was no longer just a tool, it was a threat. And if they didn't stop it, it would tear through both worlds, destroying everything in its path. Chris began pulling levers, flipping switches, and entering codes into the control panel. But the moment he did, the machine shuddered violently. The lights above them flickered wildly, and the sound of the machine's heartbeat grew louder, almost deafening. "We're running out of time," Munch said, his eyes scanning the room for anything that could help. Just then, a strange, low voice echoed through the factory, making Munch freeze in place. It wasn't a voice from the factory speakers or from any creature Munch recognized. It was something otherworldly. "You cannot stop it." The words rang in Munch's mind, echoing and reverberating through his very being. The voice was smooth, almost seductive, but there was an unmistakable undertone of power, of something ancient. Munch's fur bristled as he looked around the room. "Who's there?" "Who am I?" the voice replied, a soft chuckle following. "I am the one who wakes the dreams. The one who makes them real." The ground beneath Munch's feet trembled, and he realized with a sinking feeling that the voice was coming from the machine itself. This wasn't just a malfunction. It wasn't an accident. "You're controlling this?" Munch asked, his voice steady despite the rising panic inside him. "You're the one causing the disturbance?" The voice laughed again, low and almost mocking. "Not causing it, my friend. Unleashing it. Dreams have power. And I have come to claim it." A blinding flash of light erupted from the machine's core, and Munch was thrown back against the wall, the air around him crackling with energy. The machines. Pulsations grew faster and faster, until it felt like the very fabric of the dream world was being torn apart. "Stop it!" Munch shouted, but his words were drowned out by the machine's roar. The doors to the factory slammed shut, and the lights flickered one last time before plunging the room into darkness. The last thing Munch heard before everything went silent was the soft voice, almost a whisper, "You cannot stop what has already begun." Chapter 4: The Dream Unleashed. The world seemed to freeze. The hum of the machine faded into an oppressive silence, leaving only the soft thumping of Munch's heartbeat in his ears. He had been thrown back by the force of the machine's pulse, but now he slowly pushed himself to his feet. The room was still dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the malfunctioning machine. It flickered, casting strange, moving shadows against the walls, like twisted specters coming to life. "Chris!" Munch shouted, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Glee!" His words echoed in the empty room, but there was no answer. The tremors underfoot had subsided, but Munch could feel the tension in the air, like the calm before a storm. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, and he quickly scanned the room for his friends. His stomach churned with a rising sense of dread. Where were they? He turned toward the machine, his instincts telling him to focus on it, to understand what was happening. But as he looked at the massive machine, a strange, swirling sensation gripped his mind. It was as though the machine's heartbeat was beating in time with his own. A connection, deeper than he could comprehend, pulsed through him. Without thinking, Munch approached the machine, his large paw reaching out toward the glowing, unstable core. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, an electric shock shot through his arm, sending a jolt of panic through his body. But something was different this time. The shock didn't feel like pain. It felt like a message, a signal. Munch gritted his teeth and yanked his hand away. The voice, that smooth, omnipotent voice from before, echoed in his mind once again, sending chills down his spine. "You're too late, Munch," the voice said softly. "The dreamscape is mine now. And with it, everything." Munch's eyes narrowed. He couldn't let this happen. He couldn't let whatever this entity was have control over the dreamscapes. If it took full control, the human world and his world would be forever changed. It would be an irreversible nightmare. "Who are you?" Munch demanded, his voice firm. "What do you want?" There was a pause before the voice answered, this time tinged with amusement. "What do I want? Power. Control. The ability to shape reality itself. Dreams are more than just a child's fantasy, Munch. They are the key to everything." "And I," the voice faltered, as though savoring the words, "am the key holder." The machine hummed again, louder this time, almost as if it were alive, feeding off the emotions in the room, drawing strength from the growing tension. Munch felt a sudden pull, an overwhelming force trying to draw him closer to the machine. His muscles tensed, but his feet refused to move. "You cannot stop what's already in motion," the voice whispered, echoing in every corner of the factory. "The dream world is unraveling, and soon, all will be chaos. Your precious children's dreams will no longer be sweet. They will become my nightmares." Munch's blood ran cold. He had to act. But what could he do against something this powerful? The machine, the entity controlling it, it wasn't just a malfunction. It was a force beyond his comprehension. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he was not dealing with just another rogue monster. This was something much darker. He was about to speak again when he heard the faintest rustle behind him. "Munch?" It was Chris's voice, barely audible. "Munch, is that you?" Munch turned, relief flooding his chest as he saw Chris, stumbling out from behind a set of broken pipes. His fur was singed, and his eyes were wide with shock, but he was alive. "Munch, you need to hear this," Chris said, his voice shaking. "I've been able to access some of the data from the control panel, but it's not just a machine. The core, it's alive. This thing has been absorbing the dreams for years. But it wasn't until recently that it started growing, gaining power. And now," he hesitated, his eyes darting nervously toward the machine. "It's feeding off the fear. It's using the fear to fuel itself." Munch's heart skipped a beat. "Fear?" Chris nodded. "Yes. The darker, more intense the fear, the more it feeds. And once it has enough power, it will be able to break through the barrier separating the human world and the dream world." The weight of Chris's words hit Munch like a freight train. The entity wasn't just after control, it was after the raw power of fear. And once it gained enough of it, it would be able to tear down the walls that protected both worlds. "We need to stop it," Munch said, his voice low with determination. "But how? How do we stop something that feeds on fear?" Chris's eyes hardened. "We need to reverse the flow. We need to drain the power it's taken and shut down the machine completely. But it's not going to be easy. The more we try to fight it, the more powerful it becomes." Before Munch could respond, there was a faint sound, almost like a soft cry, coming from somewhere deep within the factory. It was a child's voice, faint and distant, but unmistakable. Munch turned to Chris, his eyes wide with realization. "It's already reaching them," Munch said urgently. "We need to move now." Chris nodded grimly, and together, they sprinted toward the sound. But as they neared the deeper chambers of the factory, the air thickened. The closer they got, the stronger the feeling of dread became. The machine wasn't just feeding on the dreams of children, it was now pulling the children's souls into the dream world, trapping them inside its twisted nightmare. And at the heart of it all, the voice whispered again, like a taunting lullaby. "You're too late, Munch. The dream world is mine. And now, you're part of it." Chapter 5: The Final Dream. The factory was eerily quiet as Munch and Chris pushed deeper into the heart of the building, following the faint cries of the trapped children. The lights flickered above them, casting long, twisted shadows along the walls. The air was thick with the sense of impending doom, something terrible was coming. As they rounded a corner, they reached the chamber where the dream machine's power was concentrated. The room was bathed in an unnatural red light, and the hum of the machine filled the air like a low growl, reverberating through their bones. The machine's core was now a swirling vortex of energy, pulsing with dark power, its once smooth surface now cracked and jagged. At the center of it all, the entity, the voice they had been hearing, manifested. It was no longer just a voice. It was a shadow, a swirling mass of darkness, taking on the form of something both familiar and alien, shifting with every passing second. It hovered over the machine, its presence suffocating. The air felt heavy, oppressive. Munch could feel the fear building inside him, trying to take root, trying to feed the entity. "You're too late," the voice echoed, now not just in his mind but all around them. "The dream world is mine. The children's dreams, their fear, are mine to control. You can't stop me. You never could." Munch felt the pull of the fear, an overwhelming weight that pressed against his chest. His legs wobbled, and his heart raced. He knew the entity was feeding off his fear, trying to weaken him. But he couldn't give in. He wouldn't. "Munch!" Chris's voice cut through the suffocating darkness. "You can't let it take over. Focus. We need to stop the machine." The moment Chris spoke, Munch snapped back to reality. His eyes hardened with determination, and he felt a surge of resolve wash over him. He couldn't allow this nightmare to take root in either world. Not on his watch. With a deep breath, Munch stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow against the swirling vortex of darkness. "You won't win," Munch said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around him. "This machine, these dreams, they belong to the children. Not to you." The entity let out a low, mocking laugh, its form shifting, becoming more terrifying by the second. "You still don't understand, do you, Munch? Fear is the true power. Fear gives me control. Fear shapes reality." "You're wrong," Munch replied, his voice gaining strength. "It's not fear that shapes us. It's hope. It's love. The children's dreams, their laughter, that's what powers this place. Not fear." The entity hissed, its form flickering. "You cannot deny it. The dream world is already slipping away. Soon, there will be no hope left. Only darkness." Munch's mind raced as he surveyed the machine. He knew that the core was the key. It was the source of the distortion, the epicenter of the nightmare that was threatening to destroy everything. "I won't let you take them," Munch said, more to himself than to the entity. He turned to Chris, who was already moving toward the control panel. They didn't have much time. The portal between the two worlds was already starting to destabilize, and the more the entity fed, the more powerful it became. "We need to shut it down, Chris," Munch said urgently. "Now." Chris nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. The machine shuddered as if resisting, but Chris didn't stop. He pulled levers, entered codes, and with one final twist of a dial, the core of the machine began to tremble. The entity howled in rage, its form distorting violently as the machine's systems powered down. The air crackled with energy, the walls vibrating as the dreamscape and the human world fought for control. The dark force seemed to scream, but it was losing its grip. No, the entity screamed. You cannot stop me. But Munch was already moving, rushing toward the machine's core. He grabbed hold of a large lever, pulling it with all his strength. The machine groaned in protest, but then, with a sudden burst of light, it all came to a halt. The vortex began to dissipate, the darkness receding as the machine's systems powered down. And then, silence. The factory was still. The pulsating hum of the machine had vanished, leaving only the quiet sound of Munch's ragged breaths and Chris's relieved exhale. Munch turned to Chris, his chest heaving. We did it. It's over. Chris nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. For now. But we'll need to rebuild the system. The dream world can't function without it. Munch looked at the now still machine, his thoughts heavy. We'll rebuild it. Together. But as the two monsters stood there, their victory bittersweet, Munch couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The entity, the force that had controlled the machine, was gone, but Munch knew better than anyone that there were always new threats, new challenges, new nightmares to face. And as long as there were dreams, Munch would be ready. He turned toward the door, his heart lifting as the soft sounds of children's laughter filled the air again. The dream world was safe, for now. The fear that had once controlled it was gone, replaced by the light of hope, of dreams that could still come true. And that was enough. Epilogue: A New Dawn. The factory, once a place of dark secrets and fear, had been transformed. The machines, now fully functional again, hummed with a calm, steady rhythm. The dreamscapes were in balance, and the human world was safe. Munch, Chris, and Glee stood together, watching the sun rise over the horizon. The world was still, peaceful, a far cry from the chaos they had just fought to survive. But they knew it wouldn't last forever. The dream world was vast, and there would always be new challenges to face. But together, they would be ready. For now, though, they stood united, watching the dawn break over the horizon, knowing that hope would always shine brighter than fear. And with that, the story of the monsters who made dreams came to an end. But their journey was far from over.